In a future where humanity had transcended its origins, Captain Elara Voss stood at the helm of the Sovereign Star, her flagship gliding through the vast expanse of the galaxy. The United Galactic Federation had reached the pinnacle of its power, its influence spreading across countless star systems. But today, their path led them to the remote and desolate planet of Xylar Prime, a world forgotten by time, draped in the shadows of an ancient civilization. Elara felt an electric thrill run through her as her team prepared for their descent. As the ship touched down on the planet's rocky surface, the archaeologists aboard buzzed with anticipation. Elara had assembled a diverse crew, each with unique skills that made them invaluable on this expedition. There was Dr. Miles Chen, the brilliant xenobiologist whose passion for alien life was matched only by his insatiable curiosity. Terrell, a Kothri warrior with an unwavering sense of honor and strength, provided protection. Then there was Alira, a Seraph adept in telepathy, whose insights often transcended the boundaries of spoken language. "Remember, this is uncharted territory," Elara cautioned as they exited the ship. "We don't know what we might find." The team nodded, their expressions a mix of excitement and apprehension. The team trekked through the crumbling ruins that dotted the landscape, remnants of a once flourishing civilization. As they approached the site of a massive temple, a sense of foreboding settled over them. Massive stone doors, intricately carved with celestial motifs, loomed before them, seemingly untouched by time. "This must be it," Miles said, his eyes wide with wonder, "the vault mentioned in the ancient texts." With a few deft movements, Alira focused her mind on the door, her psychic energy dancing in the air. Slowly, the ancient mechanisms responded, and the doors creaked open, revealing a dark chamber that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. The team stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of dust and antiquity. A pedestal stood in the center, holding a crystalline artifact pulsating with energy. "What do you think it is?" Terrell asked, his voice low as if revering the ancient object. "Only one way to find out," Elara replied, stepping forward. As her fingers brushed against the crystal, a sudden surge of power enveloped her, causing her vision to blur. She stumbled back, and the artifact flared to life, projecting a holographic image of a celestial, a being of unimaginable grace and intellect. "Beware," the celestial's voice echoed, resonating through the chamber. "The devourers awaken. They are relentless, consuming all in their path. The legacy of our civilization is a warning. You must unite to stand against them." The hologram flickered, leaving the team in stunned silence. The weight of the message hung heavily in the air, mingling with the remnants of the celestial's presence. Elara felt a shiver run down her spine. The ancient warning was more than just a tale of caution. It was a call to action. Before they could process the implications, alarms blared from the Sovereign Star, piercing the silence. "Captain, we have company," a voice crackled over the comms. A swarm of bounty hunters, drawn by rumors of the celestial technology, had intercepted their ship. Elara's heart raced. They were not just fighting for knowledge, they were now battling for their very survival. "Everyone, prepare for an ambush," Elara commanded, adrenaline surging through her veins. With determination etched on her face, she knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had secrets, and they were about to uncover them, if they could survive the chaos that was closing in. The sound of blaring alarms echoed through the chamber, mingling with the fading voice of the celestial. Elara's heart raced as she turned toward her team. The atmosphere had shifted from excitement to palpable tension in an instant. "We need to get to the ship," she said, urgency creeping into her voice. "Now!" Miles hurried to the holographic console, attempting to gather information on the approaching threat. "There are multiple ships on scanners, bounty hunters, and they're closing in fast," he reported, his fingers dancing over the controls. "They must have picked up our signals when we activated the artifact." Terrell gripped his weapon, the sharp edge of his Kothri blade gleaming in the dim light. "We cannot let them take the technology. It belongs to no one but us." Alara nodded, steeling herself. "Let's move. We have to protect the relic and ourselves." With that, they dashed through the ancient corridors, the eerie silence now filled with the echo of their hurried footsteps. As they reached the entrance of the temple, they were met with chaos. Outside, the sky was filled with the ominous silhouettes of the bounty hunters' ships. Blasts of energy erupted in the air, lighting up the desolate landscape. The Sovereign Star stood as their only refuge, but it was under siege. "Cover me!" Ilara shouted, sprinting toward the ship. Turel and Alira provided suppressing fire, their weapons unleashing bolts of energy that lit up the darkening sky. Ilara could see her crew struggling against the onslaught of mercenaries that had descended upon them, determined to seize the celestial technology. As she reached the ship, Ilara activated the ship's defenses. The ramp began to close, but just as she turned to assist her team, a blaster shot grazed her arm. Pain shot through her, but she pushed it aside. They couldn't afford to falter now. "Get in. I'll cover the rear," Ilara yelled. Turel shot a fierce look at her but obeyed, pushing Alira into the ship before turning to fire back at their attackers. The Seraph's telepathic energy crackled around her, enhancing her aim as she targeted the nearest mercenaries. One of the bounty hunters, clad in dark armor, shouted orders to his crew. "Don't let them escape. Secure the relic." The desperation in his voice only fueled Ilara's determination. With a final burst of energy, Turel managed to incapacitate 2 attackers before retreating to the ship. "Close it." Ilara barked as she hopped up the ramp, her heart pounding. The ramp sealed just as a blaster bolt struck the ship's hull, rattling it violently. "Prepare for takeoff," Ilara commanded as she took her seat in the cockpit. The ship's systems flickered to life, and she felt the familiar thrill of control surge through her. "Strap in, everyone. We're going to break through their lines." With a roar of engines, the Sovereign Star launched into the air, dodging incoming fire as Ilara navigated the ship with precision. The bounty hunters pursued, their ships weaving in and out of the debris-strewn atmosphere. "2 ships on our tail," Miles shouted from his station. "They won't stop until they get what they want." Ilara gritted her teeth, her mind racing. "Alira, can you reach their minds? See what they're planning." "I'll try," Alira replied, focusing her energy. The ship vibrated under the strain of enemy fire, but her calm presence steadied Ilara. "They're desperate. They think they can trap us ahead." "Good," Ilara said, determination fueling her next decision. "We'll use that against them. Turel, prepare for a hard turn to the left on my mark. We'll give them a taste of their own medicine." As the bounty hunters drew closer, Ilara's fingers danced over the controls, executing a sudden maneuver. Turel braced himself as the ship turned sharply, throwing the pursuing ships into chaos. The first hunter crashed into the second, and Ilara seized the moment, accelerating toward open space. The stars stretched before them, and Ilara felt a rush of relief wash over her. But in the back of her mind, the warning of the Celestial echoed ominously. The threat was far from over, and they had only scratched the surface of the danger that lay ahead. As the ship soared into the unknown, she knew they needed to prepare for the real battle that awaited them, the awakening of the Devourers. With the immediate danger behind them, the Sovereign Star sailed into the depths of space, leaving Thylar Prime and the bounty hunters far behind. The atmosphere aboard the ship was tense, but filled with a newfound sense of purpose. Ilara gathered her team in the command center, where the glow of the holographic display illuminated their faces. "All right, we need to regroup and strategize," Ilara began, her voice steady. "The celestial artifact has the potential to change everything, but we can't protect it alone. We must unite the galaxy's factions against the impending threat of the Devourers." Miles nodded, his expression serious. "We've seen how divided the galaxy is. The Kothri and the Seraphs have old grudges against each other, and many planets still harbor distrust toward the Federation. We need to be careful in our approach. Tyrell crossed his arms, his brow furrowing. I can speak to my people, but they are proud warriors. They will not join us unless they see a clear advantage in doing so. Then we show them the power of unity, Ilara replied, determination in her eyes. If we can get them to see that their survival depends on working together, we can form a coalition strong enough to face the Devourers. The crew set a course for the Kothri homeworld, a rugged planet known for its fierce warriors. Ilara prepared for the challenging negotiations ahead, knowing that gaining the trust of the Kothri would be no easy feat. Upon landing, they were greeted by a battalion of Kothri soldiers, their armor glinting in the harsh sunlight. Tyrell stepped forward, addressing his people in their native tongue, his voice booming with authority. I have returned with allies. We face a grave threat, and we need your strength. Ilara watched as the warriors exchanged glances, suspicion lingering in the air. The Kothri leader, a towering figure with piercing eyes, stepped forward. You speak of threats, but what proof do you have? We do not trust the Federation nor its allies. Ilara stepped up beside Tyrell, her heart pounding. We have uncovered ancient knowledge from the Celestials, a warning about the Devourers. This threat is real, and it is coming for all of us. We need your strength to face it. Together, we can protect our civilizations. The leader's expression remained unreadable, but Ilara noticed a flicker of interest. Show us this knowledge. If it holds truth, we may consider your plea. The team quickly shared their findings, projecting holograms of the celestial artifact and recounting the harrowing message. The Kothri warriors listened intently, the tension easing slightly as curiosity replaced suspicion. Finally, the leader nodded. We will hear you out, but our allegiance is not easily won. With the first hurdle crossed, Ilara and her team moved on to the Seraph homeworld. As they landed, the serene beauty of the planet contrasted sharply with the tension of their mission. Ilara took the lead here, her telepathic abilities a bridge between their two cultures. The Seraph leaders convened in a grand hall adorned with glowing flora, their ethereal presence a reminder of the power they held. We are aware of the Devourers, one elder said, their voice resonating through the chamber. But our people are divided, some believing that the Federation will only seek to control us further. We are not here to dominate, Ilara interjected, her eyes reflecting sincerity. We seek to protect the galaxy, to preserve the rich tapestry of life. Alone, we are vulnerable. Together, we can thrive. The Seraphs considered her words. After a tense silence, the elder spoke again. If we are to unite, we must set aside our past grievances. We will join you, but know this, the trust of our people is hard-won, and we will not tolerate betrayal. With both alliances tentatively secured, Ilara felt a surge of hope. Yet lingering doubts gnawed at her mind. The Shadow Syndicate had already shown their willingness to undermine their efforts. The stakes were higher than ever, and the galaxy was more fractured than she had anticipated. As the team returned to the Sovereign Star, Ilara knew that the real challenge lay ahead. They had formed the beginnings of a coalition, but now they had to prepare for the looming storm, the awakening of the Devourers, and the treachery that would seek to tear them apart. The coalition formed, Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Star, staring at the vast expanse of space. The recent alliances with the Kothri and Seraphs filled her with determination, yet the shadow of the impending threat loomed larger with every passing moment. The Devourers were awakening, and time was not on their side. Captain, our scouts have reported unusual activity near the Devourers' last known location. Miles informed her, his voice tense. It appears they are mobilizing. Ilara felt her pulse quicken. Gather the coalition leaders for an emergency briefing. We need to discuss our strategy before it's too late. As the leaders arrived, the atmosphere crackled with urgency. Tyrell's muscular frame stood firm beside Alira, who exuded a calm presence despite the chaos. "We can't afford to underestimate the Devourers," Tyrell said, his voice low and serious. "They're not just mindless predators, they have been evolving for eons." Alara nodded in agreement. "We need to strike first. If we can disrupt their mobilization, we might gain the upper hand. I propose a two-pronged attack. A distraction force led by the Kothri while the Seraphs, and we strike at their main stronghold." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, but one of the Seraph leaders interjected. "What if we draw their attention to us instead? If they're focused on the distraction, we may have a chance to get close enough to assess their weaknesses." "An excellent idea," Alira agreed. "I can amplify our communications to confuse them. If they think they are being attacked from multiple fronts, it may buy us enough time." With the plan set, the coalition prepared for battle. Alara took to the helm of the Sovereign Star, her fingers gripping the controls tightly as she orchestrated the fleet. The Kothri ships, sleek and powerful, led the charge, drawing the attention of the Devourers' forces, which had been gathering in ominous formations. As they neared the battle zone, the first skirmishes erupted. Ilara's heart raced as the sensors blared, signaling incoming enemy vessels. She maneuvered the ship deftly, avoiding enemy fire and directing her crew to engage. "Maintain formation. Focus on the lead ships," she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. The screen flickered with images of the Kothri ships engaging the Devourers, explosions illuminating the darkness of space. The coalition's combined firepower was impressive, but Alara knew it would take more than brute force to defeat these ancient foes. "Alara, now's your chance," she said, glancing at the Seraph leader as they prepared to make their move. Alara nodded, closing her eyes as she channeled her psychic energy. Waves of thought radiated from her, creating an illusion of multiple ships attacking the Devourers from various directions. The Devourers, already menacing and relentless, hesitated, their dark forms shifting in confusion. "Now strike!" Alara yelled, and her fleet surged forward, capitalizing on the distraction. Energy bolts erupted from the coalition ships, piercing the void and striking the enemy with precision. But just as victory seemed within reach, a massive Devourer ship emerged from the darkness, dwarfing the coalition's vessels. Its twisted form loomed menacingly, and the energy readings surged on Alara's displays. "Everyone, fall back," she shouted, but it was too late. The massive ship unleashed a devastating wave of energy, scattering the coalition's forces. "Captain, we're taking heavy damage," Miles shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Alara fought to maintain control, but the ship shook violently as they were hit. "We need to regroup. All units, fall back to the Sovereign Star. Protect the relic at all costs." As the chaos unfolded around her, Alara's heart sank. The Devourers were relentless, and she feared that the alliances they had painstakingly built could crumble in the face of such overwhelming power. "Prepare the celestial weapon," she ordered, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "It's our only hope." With determination igniting her spirit, Alara resolved to turn the tide. If they were to survive, they had to unleash the true power of the celestial legacy, no matter the cost. The battle raged around the Sovereign Star as Alara and her crew scrambled to prepare the celestial weapon. The air was thick with the acrid smell of scorched metal and the flickering lights of damaged systems. Alira's telepathic energy surged, guiding the coalition forces in a desperate retreat, but the Devourers pressed on relentlessly. "Captain, the weapon is online, but it requires a substantial amount of energy to fire," Miles reported, his face illuminated by the glow of the control panel. "We'll need to divert power from the shields and engines." "Do it," Alara commanded, her voice firm. "We're not going down without a fight." As the ship shuddered under enemy fire, Tyrell stood resolute, a wall of muscle and determination. I will hold the line, he said, readying his weapon. Give me the signal. Hold on just a moment longer, Alara replied, stealing a glance at the view screen. The massive devourer ship loomed larger, its stark, gaping maw threatening to swallow them whole. In the distance, she could see the Kothari and Seraph ships regrouping, their bravery inspiring her to act decisively. Alara, can you amplify the weapon's energy signature? We need to lure them in closer, Alara asked, her mind racing with strategy. I can try, Alara replied, her brow furrowing in concentration. It will take a lot of focus, but if I can make it seem like we are preparing for a critical strike, it might draw them in. Then let's do it. Everyone, prepare for my command, Alara shouted, her heart pounding as she felt the weight of their fate resting on her shoulders. As Alara concentrated, the sovereign star flickered with an energy signature that pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing the attention of the devourers. Their ships shifted, narrowing the distance between them, eager to finish what they had started. Now, Terrell, Alara yelled, her voice cutting through the din of battle. The Kothari warrior lunged forward, rallying the coalition fighters to engage the enemy. His roar echoed through the comms as he charged into the fray, striking down any who dared approach. Alara took a deep breath, focusing on the energy levels surging through the weapon. Miles, how's our power looking? Almost there, he replied, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked furiously. Just a few more seconds. The devourer ship surged closer, its massive form dominating the view screen. The coalition forces fought valiantly, but Alara could see that their efforts were waning against the overwhelming might of the enemy. She could feel the fear and desperation in her crew, and she refused to let them down. Now, Alara shouted, locking her gaze on the massive vessel before her. Fire the weapon. The sovereign star shook violently as the celestial weapon discharged, a brilliant beam of pure energy lancing out into the void. The light illuminated the darkness, casting an otherworldly glow as it struck the devourer ship with devastating force. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The energy surged through the devourer, causing its form to convulse violently as it absorbed the brunt of the blast. The coalition forces held their breath, the outcome hanging precariously in the balance. Then, with a deafening explosion, the devourer ship disintegrated into a cascade of fiery debris, the shockwave reverberating through the surrounding space. Cheers erupted from the coalition forces, a wave of hope surging through their ranks. But as the remnants of the devourer ship scattered, Alara's heart sank. More ships emerged from the darkness, their numbers overwhelming. They were far from safe. Captain, we need to regroup, Miles shouted, his face pale as he monitored the incoming ships. No, Alara said, steeling herself. We've come too far to back down now. We fight for every world, every life. This battle isn't just for us, it's for the future of the galaxy. As she rallied her crew, a new determination ignited within her. They had already defied the odds once. If they stood together, they could turn the tide. With renewed strength, the coalition prepared for one last stand against the looming darkness, knowing that their unity was their greatest weapon. The battle for existence had only just begun. The remnants of the devourer fleet loomed before them, dark and ominous, but the coalition forces stood united, ready to face the impending onslaught. Alara Voss took a deep breath, her heart racing with determination. They had witnessed the devastation that the devourers could unleash, but she felt a fierce resolve bubbling within her. They had already faced the abyss. There was no turning back now. Form up. We need to hold the line. Alara shouted, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. She watched as Kothari and Seraph ships moved into position, their pilots exchanging glances filled with a shared purpose. The view screen flickered, showing the enemy formations closing in. Energy readings surged, indicating that the devourers were preparing for another attack. But Alara had a plan, one that involved risking everything to ensure the future of their galaxy. Alara, can you connect with the consciousness of the Devourers? She asked, knowing the risks involved. We need to understand what drives them. Alara nodded, her expression resolute. It may be dangerous, but if I can tap into their thoughts, I might find a way to disrupt their coordination. Do it. We'll cover you, Alara replied, glancing at Tyrell and Miles, who stood ready, weapons at the ready. As Alara closed her eyes and focused, the air crackled with tension. Alara turned her attention back to the view screen, where the Devourers began their advance. She felt the weight of the galaxy's future resting on her shoulders, but she wouldn't let fear dictate their fate. Suddenly, a pulse of energy rippled through the ship, and Alara gasped, her eyes opening wide. They're driven by an insatiable hunger, a desire to consume everything. But there's a flaw. They could be confused, misled. Alara's heart raced at the revelation. We can use that against them. If we can create a diversion, we might be able to split their forces. Let's bait them, Miles said, his eyes alight with excitement. We can use the remaining energy from the celestial weapon to create a false signature that draws them in. Agreed, Alara replied, adrenaline pumping through her veins. Prepare to power up the weapon again, but this time, we'll set it to create a series of energy pulses that mimic multiple vessels. Alara, can you amplify that? I can, she said, determination etched on her face. But it'll take all my focus. You must defend me while I concentrate. With the plan in place, Alara issued the command. All ships, prepare to engage at my mark. Stay sharp and ready for anything. The coalition forces braced for the inevitable clash. As the Devourers surged forward, the Sovereign Star began to emit a series of energy pulses that echoed through space. The Devourer ships hesitated, their formations breaking apart as confusion spread through their ranks. Now, Alara shouted, and the coalition unleashed a barrage of firepower, striking the disoriented enemy ships with a fierce onslaught. The Kothri and Seraph forces moved as one, their combined might overwhelming the Devourers in a spectacular display of unity. But just as victory seemed within reach, a massive shadow emerged from the fray. The largest Devourer ship, darker and more sinister than any before, surged forward, its weapons primed and ready to fire. The coalition's initial success hung in the balance as Alara realized they needed one final push. Alara, are you ready? Alara asked, her voice steady. Almost there, Alara replied, beads of sweat forming on her brow. Just a little more focus. Alara could feel the tension in the air as the coalition pressed their attack, holding off the advancing Devourers. Alara's psychic energy crackled, building in intensity. With a final resounding pulse, Alara unleashed her telepathic energy, sending waves of confusion rippling through the massive Devourer ship. It faltered, hesitated, and then, in a moment that felt like eternity, it erupted in a catastrophic explosion. The shockwave rippled outward, scattering the remaining Devourer forces. Cheers erupted from the coalition ships, a wave of relief and triumph washing over them. Alara felt a surge of hope. This was the dawn of a new era. As the battle subsided, the surviving coalition forces regrouped around the Sovereign Star. Alara turned to her crew, a broad smile breaking across her face. They had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious. We did it, she said, her voice filled with emotion. We fought for our existence and we won. The galaxy will remember this day. The stars twinkled above them, and for the first time in ages, the galaxy felt like a place of hope rather than fear. As alliances forged in the fires of conflict stood strong, Alara knew this was just the beginning. A new dawn had arrived, and together, they would ensure that the legacy of their unity would shine brightly for generations to come.